Welcome to Rubber Bellissimo at the Movies, where we explore all things cinema. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Brutalist, which was just released in 2024, just recently. This was directed by Brady Corbet, and he wrote the screenplay with his wife, Mona Fastvold. I hope I have that pronounced correctly. I always thought it was Corbett, but I heard someone interviewing him recently say Corbet. So apologies to Brady if I have your name wrong, but I think it is Corbet. It starred Adrien Brody, Felicity Jones, and Guy Pearce, and it has a wonderful supporting cast. Joel Alwyn, Stacy Martin, Isaach De Bankole, and Alessandro Nivola, just to name a few of the several wonderful actors in this film. I'll read a brief synopsis. When a visionary architect and his wife flee post-war Europe in 1947 to rebuild their legacy and witness the birth of modern United States, their lives are changed forever by a mysterious, wealthy client. Okay, so I just saw this last week at the cinema at the TIFF Bell Lightbox. I was excited to see it, and I actually really liked Brady's I didn't see his first film. I haven't seen it yet, but he made a film, his last film, Vox Lux, with Natalie Portman, and I quite liked it. And I saw it also during TIFF, and my impression was the audience didn't take to it very well, unfortunately, but I really did. I mean, I hope I'm wrong about that. It didn't seem to get much attention at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but certainly not getting the attention that The Brutalist is getting. But I really like it. If anyone is, curious, if you haven't seen it, go check it out, or if you've seen it, comment below and let me know. But this to me, the Brutalist is a masterpiece, and I will be spoiling the film, which is something I should always say, as if anyone's following my channel, I mostly do older films, even though this is a new film, and I always have spoilers. I mean, for me, it's impossible to do a deep dive review without doing it. But this is a brand new film. But I should say that for anything, whether it's what's the difference if it's made in the 40s or now? It's always going to be new if you haven't seen it. So I will be spoiling the film, so if you haven't seen it yet and plan to, leave this video and go see the film and then come back and hear what I have to say about it. But yeah, I loved it. It's an absolute masterpiece. I mean, it's so great to see the filmmakers like Brady Corbet. You have Sean Baker. I mean, there are wonderful people in the States still doing great work. I mean, most of the newer films I've been seeing lately have been foreign. I've seen some really wonderful foreign films, and the whole thing about this question of is cinema dead, and Marvel films, and is the whole conflict with what what Scorsese said, that it's not cinema, and that's not cinema. It seems to be that people are only looking at the major studios, and so they think, oh well, movies are not good anymore because all they're doing is Marvel. But there are so many movies being made that they don't necessarily get the distribution or the or the attention they deserve. And that's a whole other story as to why things like that are happening. And a lot of things are mostly independent funded, but they're out there for sure. I mean, you streamers like Mubi. There's a lot of new good movies on there. Of course, the Criterion Channel, Canopy. There's quite a few. So you just gotta look a little more than maybe one used to. But this is a wonderful film, and to me, it's here we are, this 3.5 hour film, and it's told in a few parts. So the first part is called The Enigma of Arrival, and the second part is called The Hardcore of Beauty, and the epilogue, the last part, is the First Architecture Biennale. So it's when you have such a big story like this, and it goes through years and years and years, and several characters. It's a heavy story. Sometimes those kind of movies can just turn out to be a mess. And I was actually wondering, how did they do this without it without it being a big mess, because it touches on so many things, of course, architecture, the immigrant experience, the American dream, rape and heroin addiction, so many things. And how do you do that without it being just messy or too condensed, and what have you. And because sometimes I see movies and I'm like, I really like this in a way, but something didn't work. And then I think, okay, well, maybe there's too many. I think there was too many subplots. It was too quick and it just ended up being a messy film, just with maybe great moments. But I think because they took so much time in this film, you got 3.5 hours, and to have the film go through, after the war up until 1980, and to have told it basically in, three big, these chunks of stories through all this time, I think that's really why it works, because the film really breathes, and it sucks the audience into its world, and you really get to know these people, and it feels very lived in. It's in just from the actual structure of the film, it was interesting, because I wondered, how did all this work? And I believe it's because they just really, really took their time, and explored, everything thoroughly within the themes and the characters. But I think the biggest takeaway for me with this film, and I heard Brady Corbet say this in an interview here at TIFF in Toronto, that it's about the immigrant experience, and we see Adrien Brody's character Laszlo, as soon, it begins with him, he was a Holocaust survivor, and he's coming to America, and he's celebrating as he arrives in New York, and he looks up at the Statue of Liberty, but it's upside down, right? And so you can't help but wonder, well, what are they getting at? And clearly it's saying something about, the American dream, that the way in which we we look at that, or the way we've been fed to look at it, is, hey, this is America is a place of opportunities, and you could do anything here, and you can make, you have complete freedom, and, if you want to be a success, you could definitely make it happen. And that's, so I think the film sort of explores how the limits of that, and how simplistic that is. Not that it can't happen, not that it doesn't happen, but that's ultimately too simple. And we know that recent immigrants are often, not treated well, because they're different. And so we certainly, that's a big thing in this film, is, him being Jewish. It's, and he experiences anti-Semitism. But what I found interesting was the way in which they did it was done very, very subtly. For example, as he begins to work with Harrison Lee Van Buren Sr., who Guy Pearce plays, he's this rich, very, very, very wealthy guy who Laszlo Toth was hired by his son Harry Lee to do work at their house, and to do major renovations on their house. And Harrison Lee Sr. didn't know about it. So when they're wrapping everything up, he comes home screaming, and who let you do this, and who told you to do this? And Laszlo tries to explain that his son hired him, and he throws everyone out. They don't even get paid. And later on, we see that when as we find out later, is that then once he got over his anger, Harrison, he really admired the work, and it was in the newspapers about this amazing work. And so he finds Laszlo, who now is working on construction sites and what have you. He's staying in homeless shelters, and he hires him to do work, and to keep building things together. And he hires him back. And so there's this friendship that blooms between them at the same time. But his son, as the construction project begins, the people working with Laszlo, they don't like what he's doing, and they stray away from his designs, and that of course infuriates him. And because they're ultimately saying, we don't like what you're doing, and that, because I kept thinking, what is the connection with brutalism here and this kind of architecture? And I thought that he says something really interesting. Brady, the filmmaker, he said, brutalist architecture is representative of something that people do not understand and that they want torn down and ripped away. So that's a connection to being, in Laszlo's case, Jewish, and people don't understand. He's different. Because of ultimately because of his the way in which he does architecture and the fact that he's a Jewish person. And among all these non-Jewish people, these wealthy elites, and so what do they want to do? They want to tear it away. They want to do something else, and that's how many immigrants experience that. They're treated badly because they're different, and so they are discarded and all these horrible things. And so it's really interesting because these things are done subtly. It's no one says anything directly to him anti-Semitic, but it's all done subtly. They don't like his work. They want to stray away from what he's doing. And then his son, the son says something to him, Harrison Lee Van Buren Sr. He says to Laszlo, we tolerate you, and so it's like, okay, what does that mean? So all of these things are just subtly done. And of course, as we meet his wife later, who he thought was dead, beautifully played by Felicity Jones, Elizabeth Toth, Elizabeth, I believe. She comes back. She doesn't come back. She goes for the first time after the Holocaust to America, and there's this really moving scene where they see each other on the train station for the first time, and now she's in a wheelchair because of she was very ill, and she lost the ability to walk because of the war and everything. And Brody is incredible as he gets really, really emotional when he sees her, and what happened, and he thinks he's like, who did this to you? And it's but it's also a tender scene because they haven't seen each other in so long. And there are discussions between them specifically, particularly later, where she says to him, they don't like us here, and he says that to her as well. They do not like us here. These people don't like us here. They don't think we belong here. So they know what people are getting at, and they see through these subtle anti-Semitic remarks. And so I found that fascinating, the way in which they connect this brutalist architecture, which often people didn't like, even historically speaking, and to connect that with the story of America, the immigrant experience, post-World War II, the experience of Jewish people coming to America, and things like that. But I think anyone who's an immigrant to America, or even here Canada, can relate to those feelings, certainly. But it's so that really is the first part. But what I really liked also, an actor I really admire, is Alessandro Nivola, and he played Attila. I hope I have that right. Apologies if I don't. And he's the cousin of Laszlo, and he stays with him. He goes to New York initially, and then he goes to Philadelphia, and he stays with Attila and his wife, and he's become this. He has this furniture company, and they were working in New York originally, and they moved. They weren't finding any success there, so they moved to Philadelphia, and so their business is doing quite well. And again, he has basically. He has tried to blend in with the culture and the religion, and so he marries a Catholic woman, and he says to his cousin, oh, she's Catholic, and then he says, we're Catholic. So and Laszlo doesn't say anything. So I don't know if he necessarily converted or if he's just claiming he's Catholic, but he basically is trying to strip away anything about him that's Jewish. And then, the fact that he later throws Laszlo out because his wife claims that Laszlo hit on her and he didn't. And my impression was she just got tired of him staying with them for so long and she wanted him out. He just throws him out. And you think this is a cousin, this is a guy coming from the Holocaust, from the war. And it's just, wow. I mean, this is, this is unbelievable that your own flesh and blood would do such a thing. He also blames him for what happened with Harrison Lee Van Buren. They did all this work on their house initially. And he blames Laszlo for the fact that they got thrown out and that they didn't get paid and all this kind of stuff. And it is ridiculous to have blamed him. But I like, because Attila also worked on this whole project at the house, from what we saw in those scenes, that it was really powerfully done. And again, all this stuff is subtle, that we see even a Jewish person denying his Judaism and also throwing a cousin out, which back in their home country, I doubt he would have done. I mean, I think there would have been much more of a strong family connection and love and bond. But now we're in America, and this guy is just trying, he will throw out a cousin if he feels he wants to. So we don't see him again after that. That's the first part. But Laszlo is interesting because he's extremely ambitious, and he's all about leaving a legacy, and he wants to do this work, this architecture of his, and he's incredible. And so in a way, America's is ironically perfect for those kind of ambitions, but at what cost, and which I'll get to is the last line of the film, which is really, really interesting, which I've been really giving a great deal of thought about. At what cost? Because he goes through hell in order to accomplish everything that he accomplished, but him and his, after all this, the construction that he was doing with Guy Pearce's character, Harrison Lee Van Buren, and then it goes to hell. It gets canceled. He gets fired, and now he's back in New York, and they're living in a cramped space, which I thought was so interesting to see, that he was living basically with Harrison, and Harrison was also making him feel like a part of the family, like his cousin was, and also just discarding him, very easily, because this constructions, everything went wrong, and he's just blamed and thrown out. And so now he's living in this cramped space in New York, and his wife is a writer, and she's working, and he's working for an architectural firm. And then their niece, who Sophia, who came with Elizabeth at the beginning, is to America. She is now getting married, and she wants to move to what at that this was at the formation of when Israel. And she wants, because she just, again, it's the thing, we don't belong here, and we're not feeling like we fit in, and it's very interesting because someone asked Brady. I watched the Q&A with Brady, and someone asked him, why does Laszlo and his wife, why do they stay? And he's like, well, he says, well, they leave later, which is true. At the end, you find that they, but that's when he was much older that he leaves, but they don't want to leave. And I think, again, because it's not that simple. I mean, yeah, you hear stories of immigrants going back to their homeland. But, when you've already come from the Holocaust, in such a tragedy like that experience, and, to have gone through that, to then have gone to New York, to then have gone to Philadelphia, to go back to New York, it is not easy to keep moving and starting fresh again and again. So I think the fact that they're just, well, we live in New York and now, and we have jobs, and we're just going to stay here. I could completely understand that. Maybe in a way they wanted to leave, but it's hard. I mean, I've moved a couple of times, and it's very difficult to move and go back, and you're always starting fresh again, and it's very hard. It can be very rewarding, and in my experience, it has been, and those experiences have been wonderful and rich. But it's challenging. It's very, very challenging, and it can take a toll. But then, as we see, he meets Harrison Lee Van Buren again. He's kind of come to his senses, and he wants to work with him again and resume construction and all these plans that they had together. And then when they go to Italy, it's beautiful scenes, and again, the landscapes and everything. And it's so shocking that we see, again, because one thing that happens that we see happening is him taking heroin. He's had this injury from the war, and in order to help with the pain, he got hooked on heroin. And him and Gordon, a friend of his, beautifully played by Isaach De Bankole, they became friends when they were both living in this homeless shelter. Gordon and his son were there, and he was working with Laszlo, and they both get hooked on drugs. So in the film, every now and then you see this addiction, but no one knows about it, and it's not talked about. It's just something that he's hooked on, but he's still able to work. And it doesn't seem as though, obviously it's terrible to have that. It's bad to be addicted to heroin, and it could kill you, and it could destroy your life. But he seems to be able to still work, and it doesn't seem to be getting in way of his life. But what happens, of course, is that as they're at this party, and as he's basically taking heroin and intoxicated, we see Harrison looking like this voyeuristic shot of him just looking at Laszlo. And it's so shocking that when he sees him, that as he's passed out cold, he rapes him. And, again, Brady commented on this. It's like that thing where it's like he wanted to possess him. I mean, maybe he's jealous of him. Maybe he was jealous of his talent. And I saw that also as, again, it's like a metaphor for the immigrant experience. And sometimes one can be treated so badly that it can feel as though people want to tear you down and kill you. And I mean, I hate to use the word rape, but I thought that it was an extreme choice, but one that worked well. And it's so shocking to see this happening. And as a result of the fact that Laszlo is raped, he then you see that from that trauma and that experience that he is having a hard time to function. So when he's at work, he's screaming at people, he's lecturing people, and he's like a changed person, because I mean he could get angry or passionate in other scenes when he's at work, but now he's almost abusive to others, and it's because of really what he experienced naturally. And he even fires his friend Gordon when they get into an argument, and they were such good friends. So again, this trauma from this experience changed his life forever. And then that really powerful scene later where Elizabeth, his wife, she confronts him at his house and tells everyone there, his daughter, his son, hey, he raped my husband, and then he disappears. As it gets kind of physical, his son tries to drag her out of the house. This poor woman now she's able to walk and she's on crutches, and it gets violent, and he disappears. So did he run away, or did he kill himself? Because they can't find him. Out of the guilt and shame of what he did, or did he just vanish because he knows that just the fact that people have said this is now going to absolutely ruin any kind of reputation or the way in which his family looks at him and things like that. So that was a gut-wrenching scene. And again, Felicity Jones, I mean, everybody's wonderful, but Felicity Jones. I've only seen her in one other film. I know that she's been in a number of things that I still have to see. I saw her in this film called Like Crazy. And I remember thinking, oh, she's great. And she's really, really good in this. But Guy Pearce as well. I mean, he's perfect as this, sort of very, very rich elitist, powerful guy who he has these different sides to him because he could be ferocious and mean and vicious, but he has some of these scenes with Laszlo where they really connect, and you almost get the sense that they could be relatives or something. There's this connection between them as they both have these same interests and dreams, but then to turn around and do that to him is absolutely awful. But which sort of leads me, as we've, the ending is we get to this the epilogue, and now they're in Venice, and it's a retrospective of Laszlo's work, and his niece is that we see in the beginning. She gives a speech, and she says in the speech, no matter what the others try and sell you, it is the destination, not the journey. And I heard that line, I must have read it in an interview or something before I even saw the film. And I thought, do they really mean that? Or is that thrown to the audience of like, what is that? How can you interpret that? And Brady has talked about how people have different interpretations, which he seems open to how people seen it. And I don't think that he necessarily is saying this is, hey, look, even though this guy went through hell, look at what he's achieved. Isn't this amazing? I think he's having you take that line and really think about it, because often people look at success that way. It's like, and that's a very American, I mean, even here in Canada, is that way of thinking of there's this capitalist way of thinking where it's, they're very success driven, and it doesn't matter what you did to get that success, but look how successful you are and look at how great you are. But the question is, at what cost? Now, and often when people, sometimes what happens is people, when they acquire great wealth or success, they might have kicked a number of people down on the way. And in this case, Laszlo didn't. But what happened to him, and look at how he was treated. Look at the things that happened to him. I just think it's very interesting way to end the film. Something that, this is the beauty of a film like this, that it's ambiguous and it's complicated, and so you can think about this forever. And my answer may change, as I see it again. I mean, the film is a lot to take in, and I've only seen it once. Usually when I review things on this channel, I've seen it a couple of times at least, and so it's almost hard in a way to have seen this once and review it. So I'm doing my best, as you can see. But it's powerful, it's strong, and of course the DOP, Lowell Crawley. The cinematography in this is beautiful. I mean, it's low-key lighting. I know at times they were using even natural lighting, so it almost looks like neo-noir. It's very darkly lit, which I thought was perfect for the things happening in this movie. There are times where the colors are warmer, particularly at the train station when Laszlo sees his wife, reunites with his wife, and things like that. But they also shot it on VistaVision, which was developed in the 1950s. Hitchcock used it a lot. You think of that the scene in Vertigo with the bridge in San Francisco. It can fit the VistaVision on the widescreen format. It can fit those really big architectural spaces, and so this, as they were saying, Lowell and Brady, they can, because architecture is a ongoing motif in the film, such a big part of the film. It was the perfect way to shoot it, because they could really fit those landscapes, and it's really rich and beautifully and visually poetic, and it's stunning. I mean, it's really, really, really beautiful. Of course, it's also perfect for the time period, this being post World War II. VistaVision was developed in the 50s, and people haven't I don't even know how often VistaVision has been used in the last 50 years or so. So it's amazing to see someone utilize it so beautifully in the way in which they did. So, everything, like I said, the performances, the writing, the cinematography, the direction, the story, the themes, it's a masterpiece. I think it's a film people will be writing about and talking about for years. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out. And if you have seen it, comment below and let me know what you think. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/RobertBellissimo at the movies for full details. You can also leave a donation, or what I call a tip, by clicking the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on that and you can leave a donation if you choose to. Of course, I would greatly appreciate that. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movie logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos. I would also really appreciate if you leave a comment, share the video, like the video. All of these things create traction onto my YouTube channel and really help share the video far and wide and the channel in general. So thank you so much for doing that, and I will see you all in the next one.